It's my journey, it's your journey. You need my help and I need yours. 'Cause we are...
Hello, family. Welcome to Journeys of Faith Super Saints podcast. Brother Joseph Fry Aldenhoven here at your service. Be sure to look at the description for special information of interest to you. And before I get started, did you know you can access this podcast with our new app? You can just go to the Apple App Store and search for Journeys of Faith. The app is free and has many features you will enjoy. Living the devout life today. Lessons from St. Francis de Sales for modern Catholics. In an age filled with distractions, noise, and the constant tug of war for our attention, the call to holiness remains as real and urgent as ever. How can Catholics today cultivate authentic devotion in a world so different from that of the saints? And what time-tested wisdom can guide us in weaving faith, hope, and charity into modern life? It is here that St. Francis de Sales, gentle shepherd, spiritual writer, and doctor of the Church, becomes an indispensable companion on our journey. For the community at Journeys of Faith, whose mission thrives on Eucharistic devotion, Marian spirituality, and the living legacy of the saints, the example of St. Francis de Sales isn't merely an echo from the past. It's a living testament. His invitation to live each moment, each action for God resonates just as powerfully in our homes, workplaces, and parishes as it did across the villages and valleys of 17th century France. In this article, we'll explore the timeless lessons St. Francis de Sales offers to modern Catholics seeking a vibrant, faith-centered life. Whether you're part of our retreat family in Morrilton, a virtual pilgrim yearning for deeper spiritual formation, or someone discovering your devotion anew, let his gentle counsel guide you, reminding us that the devout life is not reserved for a distant few, but a universal call answered in the ordinary and extraordinary moments of every day. Who was St. Francis de Sales? A brief biography. Born in 1567 in the Duchy of Savoy, St. Francis de Sales grew up in a world marked by religious conflict and transformation, despite being raised in a noble family with expectations to pursue law or politics. He heard a call to serve Christ and dedicated his life to the Church, often in the face of resistance from his family and peers. After his ordination to the priesthood, Francis was sent to the Chablais region, a stronghold of Calvinist Protestantism. There he displayed the gentleness, intellectual rigor, and patient charity that would make him a spiritual giant. He engaged in tireless evangelization, walking from village to village, writing pamphlets that explained the Catholic faith with clarity and compassion, an early manifestation of the modern faith-centered evangelization so vital today. Over the years, his loving approach rather than forceful debate brought thousands back to the faith. In 1602, Francis became Bishop of Geneva, shepherding a diocese in exile due to religious tensions, yet he never allowed adversity to dim his pastoral zeal. Through works like Introduction to the Devout Life and Treatise on the Love of God, he emphasized holiness in everyday life, teaching that anyone, regardless of occupation or status, could live a deeply devout life rooted in prayer and sacramental grace. Francis de Sales' legacy endures as a model of humility, charity, and gentleness. Canonized in 1665, he is celebrated as the patron saint of writers, journalists, and the Catholic press, a testament to his lifelong belief that faith is best shared through words of encouragement and love. Take the next step with Journeys of Faith. St. Francis de Sales invites us to pursue holiness in our daily lives, no matter our vocation or state in life. At Journeys of Faith, we are committed to walking alongside you as you deepen your relationship with Christ, the Eucharist, and his saints, encouraging every Catholic to live the devout life today. Ready to grow in faith and become part of our vibrant community? Here's how you can get involved. Join our virtual or armchair pilgrimages, experience the spiritual richness of Catholic shrines and Eucharistic miracles from your own home. Let the lives of the saints, like St. Francis de Sales, inspire your daily walk with God. Visit Holy Family Mission. Come to our Morrilton, Arkansas campus for prayer retreats and community fellowship amidst sacred replicas and holy spaces. Explore our resources, discover faith formation materials, books, and digital content centered on Eucharistic miracles, Marian devotion, and the lives of the saints. Stay connected. Sign up for our newsletter to receive stories of hope, upcoming events, and powerful reflections directly to your inbox. At Journeys of Faith, we live the gospel, one heart, one mind, one spirit, with one vision. Join us in building a faith-filled community today. Introduction to the devout life. At the dawn of the 17th century, St. Francis de Sales faced a world mired in anxiety, religious division, and the challenges of daily secular life, a landscape that in many ways mirrors our own. It was into this tumult that he wrote his seminal work, Introduction to the Devout Life, crafted as a series of personal letters to his spiritual daughter, Philothea, meaning lover of God. The book offered ordinary Catholics a radical proposal. Holiness is not reserved for clergy or religious, but is fully possible for everyone, whatever their station in life. St. Francis de Sales' vision was profoundly countercultural. He dismantled the notion that piety was incompatible with the pursuits of busy parents, merchants, soldiers, or those entangled in worldly responsibilities. Instead, he mapped a path of practical spiritual discipline rooted in love, accessible, actionable, and deeply human. Introduction to the Devout Life pulses with wisdom on prayer, meditation, and the pursuit of virtue. It offers gentle, concrete advice on resisting temptation, transforming works and worries into acts of devotion, and fostering a heart that grows ever more attuned to Christ. Indeed, the enduring appeal of St. Francis' words lies in their warmth and realism. He recognized the devout life as a dynamic, grace filled journey, not a fixed destination. For modern Catholics longing to integrate faith with daily existence, this timeless guide remains a touchstone. In each page, St. Francis de Sales invites us to embrace the reality that every moment, even in its messiness and monotony, can be sanctified, that holiness is forged not in escape from the world, but in deep engagement with it, heart and soul. Universal call to holiness, breaking the myth of spiritual elitism. St. Francis de Sales, writing more than 4 centuries ago, addressed a challenge that still echoes in the church today: the mistaken belief that true holiness is reserved for priests, religious, or mystics. In his masterpiece, Introduction to the Devout Life, he dismantled this myth by insisting that sanctity is not a spiritual luxury for the few, but a universal invitation extended to all the baptized. The wisdom of St. Francis de Sales meets modern Catholics in the bustle of daily life, the boardrooms, classrooms, kitchens, and city streets. He reminds us that the spiritual life isn't about withdrawing from the world, but about allowing God's grace to permeate every corner of our existence. The universal call to holiness means that each vocation, whether single or married, professional or contemplative, is fertile ground for real sanctity. As St. Francis proclaimed, it is an error to banish the devout life from the company of soldiers, the shop of tradesmen, the court of princes, or the home of married folk. He invites lay people to cultivate habits of prayer, humility, and charity amid their ordinary routines. Holiness, he teaches, does not demand extraordinary feats, but a steady faithfulness, being present to family members, honoring commitments, and loving the neighbor right in front of us. Francis de Sales was convinced that every Christian can become a living gospel simply by striving to love God and neighbor in their unique circumstances. This powerful message is especially important in a fractured world hungry for witness and hope. Holiness is not a competition for the spiritual elite. It's the humble, daily yes to God's gentle invitation. The walls between ordinary and holy lives come tumbling down when we recognize, as Francis de Sales insisted, that everyone is called to the heights of love through small, faithful steps. Practicing devotion and daily duties, the Salesian way. St. Francis de Sales, often called the gentleman saint, offers a profoundly practical roadmap for living out holiness in the ordinary rhythms of life rather than seeking sanctity only in extraordinary acts or secluded contemplation. He champions the idea that true devotion can and must flourish amid the daily responsibilities and encounters that fill our days. Central to the Salesian way is the conviction that every circumstance, no matter how humble or routine, can become an offering to God. St. Francis writes, "Great occasions for serving God come seldom, but little ones surround us daily." He encourages us to sweep our floors, prepare meals, care for loved ones, or answer emails as acts of devotion done with love, patience, and gratitude. By intentionally inviting God into these moments, the mundane transforms into the sacred. Practicing Salesian devotion means moving through the day with a heart centered on God and a will disposed to kindness. This looks like greeting colleagues with charity, listening attentively to a neighbor's concern, or persevering in work when enthusiasm wanes. It means forgiving quickly, speaking gently, and seeking interior silence amid external noise. Salesian spirituality isn't about achieving perfection overnight, but about turning repeatedly to God with trust, humility, and hope. In practical terms, St. Francis urges Catholics to start and end the day with simple prayers, to raise your heart to God during brief pauses, and to sanctify intentions before beginning any task. He invites us to remember that true devotion never harms, but perfects everything it touches. By faithfully living out this vision, believers today can weave a tapestry of holiness thread by thread within the fabric of daily life, quietly evangelizing the world one ordinary act at a time, and living Eucharistic spirituality with St. Francis de Sales. St. Francis de Sales, a masterful spiritual guide, championed an approach to the devout life that is not only beautifully gentle, but also profoundly Eucharistic. For him, the heart of Christian spirituality was grounded in daily encounters with Christ in the Eucharist, an invitation extended to every person, not reserved for the cloistered or the clergy, but open to lay faithful earnest in pursuing holiness. He taught that regular reception of Holy Communion was not a privilege for the perfect, but rather a remedy and nourishment for sinners striving to grow in virtue. Francis urged, "Go often, as much as you can, to Holy Communion." In times marked by distraction, doubt, or discouragement, he turned the gaze of the faithful back to the altar, to the living presence of Jesus, not as a distant memory, but as a present reality, infusing our daily routines with grace. St. Francis de Sales saw the Eucharist as a wellspring of patience, humility, and charity, the virtues he believed would transform not only individuals but entire communities. Living Eucharistic spirituality, as he modeled, means allowing Christ received in the sacrament to reshape our thoughts, govern our words, and inform our actions. It means carrying the peace of the altar into the marketplace, the home, the hospital room, the exact places modern Catholics wrestle with faith in a busy, restless world. His simple, practical advice, prayer before and after Mass, conscious acts of adoration, patient waiting before the tabernacle, remain urgent invitations in an age when solitude and silence are in short supply. In modeling Eucharistic devotion, St. Francis points us to a life where Christian charity flows not from mere discipline, but from hearts set ablaze by Christ, really present in the Blessed Sacrament. Through him, modern Catholics can discover that the Eucharist is not simply the summit of our faith, but the source and starting point of daily sanctity, overcoming anxiety through trust in divine providence. St. Francis de Sales lived in a world marked by upheaval, wars, plagues, and religious discord. Yet his enduring message to the anxious souls of his time rings true for us today. Do not look forward in fear to the changes in life. Rather, look to them with full hope that as they arise, God, whose very own you are, will lead you safely through all things. For modern Catholics wrestling with uncertainty, whether personal, societal, or spiritual, his wisdom offers profound consolation and actionable guidance. Francis taught that anxiety often arises from our attempts to control outcomes or foresee every possible turn on our path. Instead, he championed the practice of holy abandonment, a radical trust in divine providence. This is not passive resignation, but a dynamic, faith filled confidence that God, in his infinite wisdom and love, is intimately involved in every detail of our lives. To cultivate this trust, St. Francis recommended practical steps steeped in prayer and reflection. Daily surrender. Begin each day with a simple prayer of offering, placing your plans, struggles, and hopes into God's hands. Mindful discernment. When faced with difficult decisions, pause to seek God's will through quiet reflection, spiritual reading, and counsel rather than rushing to anxious conclusions. Gentleness toward self, recognizing our human frailty. Francis urged treating ourselves with the same patience we offer others, recognizing that setbacks are opportunities for grace and deeper trust. Gratitude as antidote. Anxiety loses its grip when we practice gratitude, recalling the many ways God has provided in the past, even when the future seems clouded. By rooting our daily struggles in prayerful reliance on God's providence, just as St. Francis de Sales did, we discover a peace the world cannot give. His enduring example invites every Catholic to step forward in faith, fortified by hope and the unshakable assurance of God's unfailing care. Praying always Salesian methods of mental prayer. St. Francis de Sales, known for his gentle spirit and practical wisdom, taught that prayer is the lifeblood of a devout Christian life. Far from being the domain of cloistered monks and nuns alone, mental prayer, the art of lifting one's mind and heart to God, was for de Sales accessible to every Catholic, whatever their vocation or daily routine. At the core of Salesian spirituality is the conviction that prayer need not be confined to a chapel or a specific hour. De Sales wrote, "Every Christian needs a half hour of prayer each day, except when he is busy, then he needs an hour." Through his timeless work, Introduction to the Devout Life, he mapped out a method both simple and profound. Begin by placing yourself in the presence of God, recognizing the divine gaze upon you. Next, focus on a spiritual theme or a gospel scene, allowing it to settle into your imagination and draw out reflection. De Sales encouraged the faithful to use short, loving aspirations, brief prayers like darts of the heart when distractions or duties arise. Lord, grant me patience, or Jesus, I trust in you, can become whispered prayers in the midst of the day's chaos. In this way, the ordinary events of life, work, chores, interactions, transform into opportunities for unceasing dialogue with God. He also championed the practice of daily spiritual reading and frequent reflection, recommending a gentle perseverance in prayer even when feelings of dryness or distraction threaten to derail us. For De Sales, the aim was not perfection in technique, but perseverance in love. Through consistent yet humble effort, mental prayer becomes not merely a task to accomplish, but a habit of drawing close to the Sacred Heart in every arena of life. And for Catholics navigating the complexities of the modern world, St. Francis de Sales' advice is both a comfort and a challenge. He shows that praying always is neither impractical nor burdensome. It is the soul's quiet revolution, infusing each day with grace, presence, and the whispered promise of ongoing conversion. Marian devotion in the teachings of Francis de Sales. St. Francis de Sales, known for his gentle approach to spiritual guidance and his deep love for the church, placed Marian devotion at the heart of the devout life. For Francis, devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary was not simply an optional extra, it was an essential compass, leading the faithful ever closer to her Son, Jesus Christ. He taught that turning to Mary was the surest way to advance in holiness because she models perfect charity and humility for all believers. In his seminal work, Introduction to the Devout Life, Francis de Sales counseled Catholics to have recourse to the Blessed Virgin and to entrust their hearts to her maternal care. He saw Mary not only as the Mother of God, but as a spiritual mother to each Christian. For him, imitation of her virtues, her purity, patience, and willingness to say yes to God should infuse daily life, shaping every thought, word, and deed. Francis encouraged frequent recitation of the Hail Mary and the Rosary, seeing these practices as powerful tools that unite believers in prayerful solidarity. In his letters and sermons, he often referred to Mary as the star of the sea, guiding souls through the storms of life to the safe harbor of Christ. He reminded Catholics that Mary's intercession is a channel of grace, helping them to overcome challenges and remain steadfast in faith. In a world often distracted by noise and novelty, Francis de Sales' approach to Marian devotion remains profoundly relevant. He invites modern Catholics to rediscover Mary as a model of attentive listening and courageous action, inspiring them to deeper prayer, greater trust, and an unshakable hope in God's providence. Through devotion to Mary, Francis assures believers of a constant companion who will lead hearts gently and surely toward a more devout and Christ centered life. Choosing friends wisely, building Catholic community today. St. Francis de Sales taught that the choice of friends is all important to the devout life. In the heart of a world that often prizes independence and self expression above all, his wisdom can feel countercultural, even radical. Yet, for Catholics seeking to nurture authentic faith, building a strong faith centered community remains not just advisable but essential. Today, many Catholics grapple with superficial relationships and the isolation of the digital age. Social networks may promise connection, but soul deep friendship rooted in shared values, accountability, and spiritual growth requires intentionality. St. Francis urged his followers to seek companions who not only shared their beliefs, but also inspired them to greater love of God, especially through their example and mutual encouragement. This doesn't mean walling ourselves off from the world. Instead, it's about surrounding ourselves with those who challenge us to live the gospel more fully. Faith filled friendships provide safe places to discuss doubts, celebrate victories, and persevere through spiritual dryness. In small groups, parish ministries, and prayer circles, Catholics can cultivate the types of bonds St. Francis envisioned, friendships that become incubators of grace. Building beloved community is more than a social pursuit, it's a spiritual discipline. It calls us to intentional acts of kindness, forgiveness, and vulnerability. Inspired by St. Francis de Sales' example, Catholics today can rediscover the power of holy friendships, linking hearts and minds with one vision, advancing the mission of Christ through unity, compassion, and joyful witness. Walking the devout path together. As we reflect on the timeless wisdom of St. Francis de Sales, we are reminded that holiness is not reserved for an elite few, but is accessible to every Catholic striving to live out their faith in today's world. His gentle counsel, rooted in humility, charity, and steadfast devotion, remains as relevant now as it was centuries ago. In a world filled with distractions and anxieties, his message calls us to anchor ourselves in prayer, seek peace in the present moment, and approach every person with the compassion of Christ. At Journeys of Faith, our mission echoes St. Francis de Sales' invitation to live Jesus, making the love and teachings of Christ visible in our daily actions. Whether you are deepening your Eucharistic devotion, seeking the intercession of the saints, or embracing Marian spirituality, You are part of a faith-filled community that journeys together in hope. Let us encourage one another, drawing strength from St. Francis de Sales and all the saints who have walked before us, united as one heart, one mind, one spirit, with one vision. May we continue to share the light of Christ, inspiring others to discover the joy and beauty of living the devout life in our modern age. Family, there is more to this post, so please see the link in the description for the rest of the article. And be sure to click the link in the description for special news item. And since there is more to this article, finish reading and check out the special offer. Visit journeysoffaith.com website today.
It's your journey, but we won't make the trip alone, 'cause we know God will lead us home. It's our journey of faith. It's our